All right, I want to go to Senator Tom Cotton on all of this, the Arkansas Republican. What he makes it, man, oh man, Senator, I don't understand these parliamentary rules and what happens, but this is going to drag out. But it seems like the conclusion is foregone here, right? I mean, it's going to go largely along party lines, and it's going to pass. Do you see anything to stop that?
Hey, Neil, it's good to be on with you. Yeah, I got to say that the Pelosi payoff, the Schumer shakedown, the 628-page bill we're reading on the floor right now is not exactly a page turner. I just left my office, and it sounds like they're still in the table of contents. But what Senator Johnson did today, what Republican senators support, is not just a procedural tactic. We only got a copy of this bill a couple hours ago, and they wanted to move right into voting on it and trying to amend it. So this is going to ensure that senators and the American public have a chance to read this legislation so they can recognize that fewer than 10% of all the funds spent on this go to the coronavirus. Most of them don't even go this year. So you've got $350 billion for states, many of whom, like California, didn't even lose revenue last year, or $130 billion for schools, many of which refuse to reopen, almost all of which will not be spent in this school year. That's why it's so unfortunate that Joe Biden and the Democrats decided to pass this party line bill, because Republicans had shown last year we were willing to cooperate to pass bills that were actually targeted to the needs of the American people in the middle of this pandemic.
You know, I know to satisfy some moderate Democrats, Joe Manchin comes to mind, Senator, they wanted to tighten the restrictions around who gets these stimulus checks, these $1,400 stimulus checks, but in so doing, 12 million fewer Americans will receive them. And I thought at first, naive though I am, that money would be savings here, but it's just channeled into something else, right? That doesn't change the overall package price tag.
I think that's right, Neil. Again, we're still reading the bill, but I think the Democrats are dead set on keeping the spending at $1.9 trillion, even though there's a lot of room for savings here. On that specific provision, look, we passed multiple bills last year that sent out checks to families that were lower income, that lost income, and that were struggling to make ends meet. But we shouldn't be sending checks from taxpayers to families that are making more than $100,000 a year, that lost no income whatsoever, that have the kind of jobs where you can work from home, you can work on a computer, you can work on a telephone. That's why this legislation should be targeted to those people, like waiters and waitresses and bartenders and others who have been so badly impacted by this pandemic.
Do you know, Senator, is there any chance that any of your Republican colleagues would vote for this? I know the Democrats that were working on Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, that there's some aspects of this she does like, would be beneficial to her state. Any sense that any Republican votes for this?
I don't anticipate any Republican senators voting for the bill, Neil. In the House of Representatives, not a single Republican representative voted for it. The Democrats could have gotten a lot of Republican votes. In fact, the bills we passed last year passed on average with more than 90 votes in the Senate. But they decided to go down this party line path. That's regrettable. I suspect they're going to have to live on this party line path. Kamala Harris will be coming in several times in the days ahead to cast tie-breaking votes.
You know, you mentioned the vice president, sir. There had been talk among progressives, go ahead and overrule the parliamentarian and push this minimum wage $15 feature into the package. Now, that is unlikely. I don't think she can do that. But leaving that aside, you and Senator Mitt Romney had come up with an alternative plan to raise the minimum wage to, I believe, $10 an hour over 4 years or something like that. And I'm just wondering what was the ultimate reception you got on that, because I think we'll probably revisit this higher wage issues somewhere, right?
Yeah, Neil, they're not going to be able to put a $15 hour minimum wage in this legislation, partly because it's against the Senate rules, but partly because they don't have the Democratic votes for that either. It's clear that there are not enough Democrats in the Congress that will support a $15 an hour minimum wage. So what Senator Romney and I propose is a $10 an hour minimum wage that's phased in over time and indexed to inflation. That would be a real wage increase from the minimum wage that was last increased in 2009. We pair it with E-Verify, the electronic verification system, so employers know that their job applicants are authorized to work in the country legally. That's not just a horse trade for something Democrats like and Republicans like. Those are both tightly connected to our objective, which is higher wages for American workers.
So what happens on the wage front?
I suspect we'll revisit it in the months ahead, Neil. There is some movement in both parties to increase the minimum wage. Senator Romney and I are working on that specific legislation with Senators Portman, Collins, and Shelley Moore Caputo. But in addition, we've had other Republicans who have expressed interest in working with us on the issue. We've had conversation with Democrats as well. Some of the Democrats who think that $15 an hour as a nationwide standard may be a little bit too high. Ultimately, some of the more left-wing Democrats, though, are going to need to compromise and realize that $15 an hour just doesn't have the votes in the Congress, that we can find common ground on this issue if we focus on a wage that works for the entire country and we pair it with the E-Verify system, make sure that those wage gains go to American workers.
All right, Senator Cotton, very good seeing you. Thank you for taking the time, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.